in New Providence, Bahamas.
The thoughts, views, and comments expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the management, ownership, or production of Glory 93.9 FM.
Today can be the turning point in your life by making a simple decision.
Fundamental questions of navigation. Where am I? Where am I going? And how do I get there from here?
I invite the leaders of our planet to ask themselves these three questions before they make any crucial decisions.
But if you don't make decisions, you're going to stay right where you are.
We are all map makers.
We are in a time of transition.
If we're going to change, we have to change the direction that we're going.
Our planet needs leaders who know where they want to go.
When we change the direction we're going, then we want to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Leaders who can see the big picture.
Because if we're not, we're going to either go backwards or we're going to stay where we are.
Recognizing the psychological and the spiritual shifts and changes that need to be made, often from the inside to the outside.
To be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm.
Complex journeys require navigation. The path to the truth is one such journey. This is your GPS. Hairstyling services provided by J.D. Edwards Salon and Spa, Palmdale Shopping Plaza, Madera Street.
Accessories provided by Chevette Williamson Jewelry. Standout jewelry for standout women.
Wardrobe provided by Bahari Bahamas. Visit shopbahari.com.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I am your host, Michelle Malcolm. It's always a pleasure to be in your company today. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. So, I'm calling the show today Living on the Edge. And we are going to be analyzing the 2021-2022 budget. As you know, the budget debate began in the House of Assembly this week, and it's a much anticipated budget communication. Everybody was waiting to see what the competent authority would, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, whichever hat you want to give him in this instance, would bring as it relates to how to turn this ship around, how to get us to the place where we start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Because it seems that we've been in a tunnel for a long, dark tunnel for well over a year. Actually, for some, going on 2 years, if you're considering Dorian, and then after Dorian, COVID. And clearly it has, that double blow has really impacted our economic standing in this country. And so this perhaps was one of the most anticipated budget communications to be brought to the House of Assembly, because everybody wanted to see what is the plan? How are we going to get out of this situation? And depending on who you talk to, some said that the budget communication brought by Prime Minister Minnis was doable, and others think that it is an exercise in fantasy. So it really depends on who you talk to. Today, we are going to be talking to Marlon Johnson, who is going to be able to help us to dissect this and break it down. And I have some questions that I want to put to Marlon. But in the meantime, I want to begin the show with this clip from the House of Assembly. And this is the PLP's Shadow Minister of Tourism, Chester Cooper, giving his view on the budget communication. Let's go to that clip.
We have yet to see the detailed plan on the Lucayan Renewal Holdings and Grand Lucayan Resort.
Millions.
You have yet to table in this House the lease on the post office, Town Center Mall deal.
Millions.
I know an increase of 1.5 million for the post office operations. I'll deal with that in the heads, but I wonder whether there's anything related to that. You're spending $37 million in expenditure of the health visa money, and you yet to bring any report to this House on pandemic spending, although you're required to do so by law. We have no report from the Fiscal Responsibility Council, which you are required by law to bring by the end of March. We have no detailed reports on the Irma donations, and the people of Ragged Island want to know where the Irma hurricane money gone. We have no report to date on the donations for Dorian. We have never been told how much we paid those foreign QCs to prosecute the Bahamian political figures.
Look what he did to the chief magistrate.
And let's not forget, the Oban files are still missing. So you failed on transparency and accountability too. You're a failure.
Okay, so that was Chester Cooper giving his interpretation of the quality of the budget communication that was presented to the House of Assembly this week. Now, I'm sure that our guest today is going to have a different view. Let's add him to the stream. Once again, welcome to GPS, Financial Secretary Marlon Johnson. Marlon, welcome back to the show.
All right, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming. Now, I'm going between two laptops because my laptop this morning was trying to freak out on me. So I'm looking I'm looking back and forth between the one that I'm actually on and the one where I took my notes, because I had to prepare notes. I say, Marlon, come on this show, I got to be prepared. I can't come on this show and fluff. So so I'm gonna be looking back and forth between the camera I'm on and my notes, because my laptop just decided to wake up this morning. It has a mind of its own, and sometimes it drives me crazy. So this budget debate just started this week, and a lot of people are giving their views on whether or not this is worth the paper it's on, or whether or not it's a work of genius. Depends on who you talk to. And let's get started with, what are your views on this? What do you think? How would you grade this budget communication, and why would you give it that grade?
Well, I won't do I'm getting feedback. I don't know. I have my earphones.
Okay, I don't know. I'm not hearing feedback from here. So I don't know if it's coming across the stream that way, but from where I sit, there's no feedback.
Okay. All right. I'll try to go. But I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, take them off and see if that makes a difference.
Hold on a second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
I'm still getting feedback.
Delton, are you hearing any feedback? No. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. So, well, I will give us a grade, because that's opining on it. What I can say is that the budget was prepared within the context of the fiscal strategy that was approved by Parliament, or that went to Parliament in December 2020. So, from a fiscal standpoint, the numbers and the projections fall within that fiscal strategy. As far as what folks would grade it at, that really comes before the Bahamian people. That becomes commentators like yourselves and citizens to assess the grade and the various commentators. But what we can say is that from a technical standpoint, we try to shape the budget within the parameters of the fiscal strategy report, and we give our best technical advice. And from where I sit, part of my job is to give economic advice to the policymakers to help them shape whatever policies they come up with. So I think me and the team here at the Ministry of Finance have been faithful to that discharge. And I'm pleased to say that a lot of what we recommend, as it happens every year in every administration, has ended up in the budget.
Okay. I want to, excuse me, break this down in 4 sections. There was a very interesting national review in The Guardian this week by Candia Dames, and she called that national review, I think, On the Edge of a Cliff, or something like that was the title. And she talked about how there are so many varying opinions about this budget depending on who you speak to, and she did quote a couple of different financial analysts on their views. One of the things that she attributed to Zhivargo Lang, Zhivargo says, if you were rating it as a baseball hit, at least it might be a double or likely a single, but it sure will not be regarded in my mind by anybody as a home run. This is what former Minister of State for Finance Zhivargo Lang had to say in his analyzing the budget communication. And like I said, we have several others who have also opined, their view of this budget. Some, in support of it, others saying it's not a good one. So according to the CFAL president, Anthony Ferguson, he said the projection is simply unrealistic. And he believes that no government in the last 20 years has met their revenue projections, and invariably they always exceed their expenditure. And he also went on to say, if you use their numbers, they are suggesting that the Bahamas economy for 2021 and to 2022 will recover 90% of the 2018-2019 revenue, and that is totally, absolutely impossible. So depending on who you talk to, this thing goes from one spectrum all the way to the next as far as people's opinion of this budget. From where I sit, I see 4 weak spots. And I want to sort of split this show up to talk about what I believe are the weak spots. And then you can, I guess, in your capacity, having direct knowledge, help us to understand how we're going to shore up these weak spots, at least from my standpoint. The first area I want to talk about is job creation. Because when you really think about it, the Resilient Bahamas plan is all about what was already done. But July 1 ushered in a new budget year. And so...
You mean July 1 will usher in a new budget year?
Yes, will usher in a new budget year. So, right. So we now have to look forward. And I want to engage you of the policy going forward as of July 1. Mm-hmm. So what is the plan to bring about an accelerated Bahamas recovery moving forward? That's what I want to talk about. What do you have to say as it relates to that? Because
the Resilient Bahamas plan spoke to last year's plan. The Accelerated Recovery Bahamas is what the Prime Minister laid out in his speech and in his contribution. That's the go forward plan. And those elements are later. And we saw the document yesterday, and it was in the newspaper as well. That so that lays out the plan going forward. Is any specific element of that you want to cover?
Yes. I want to talk about your detailed strategy for reopening the economy. Right. 50% of the population is believed to have not yet returned to work. Right.
That number is incorrect. That is absolutely
okay. What is the number?
So the number that it's projected is somewhere around 25-26% unemployment presently.
25 to 26%
unemployment. Yes.
Okay, let's go with your number.
So I don't want you to go with my number. So let me frame the number.
Yes.
So we're not talking at cross purposes.
Okay.
Right. We had about 212,000 people in the employed when this thing hit, the COVID hit.
Right.
At the peak, and at that rate, we had about 10% unemployment. Mm-hmm. All right. We went up as high as far as claims, because of course one of the reasons we're able to measure this is because people put in for unemployment claims, and that number peaked at probably in the high 30s. High 30-something thousand. That number has since now declined down to about 25,000 persons who now claiming some sort of unemployment or related social benefit. And so when you just do simple mathematics, you'll know that if you had a labor force of around 215,000 people and 25,000 of that is still displaced, you had 10%, that's another 15%, call it, So that's how you can reasonably be assured that your unemployment rate is around 25, 26%. That's how the IMF would do it. That's how we do it. So the number may be off 5 or 10% either way, but it's still extremely high and extremely distressing. But it is nowhere near 50% of the that we definitely know for sure.
Okay.
So we can reasonably assume that it's around 25, 26%, which is still a very, very high number, not a very comfortable number. Yes.
Right. And then when we look at what is happening with Atlantis, but what we have to consider, though, is the unemployment numbers do not include those who are still on furlough, correct?
No, that would absolutely include them. Absolutely.
Unemployment numbers include those who are on furlough.
Yes, but for purposes of this exercise, because those 25, 27, that included that 27,500 to 27,000 people who are collecting unemployment. So yes, the furloughed people would be included in that because the number was higher, and some of those furloughed people went back to work.
Would that also include persons who have not been looking for jobs?
Of course, because those persons would have been in the original 10%. Remember, that's the discouraged workers number. So yes, it would include those numbers, yes.
Okay, all right. So let's say 26%.
But I mean, the point, I don't want to distract from your core point, which is still a valid point. The number is still
a high number.
It's still a very high number, yes. I just wanted to, I don't want people to be left with this notion that half of Bahamians are unemployed. That number is incorrect.
Okay, so many small, medium-sized businesses have still not fully reopened, as you are aware, in addition to the 26% of persons who are unemployed. What is the plan to build back? What is the plan to build back that budget?
So what is the plan? Let me see if I can help you. Were you asking how are we going to get people employed? That's the question.
Yeah, that's part of the question. Yes.
All right. Sorry. What's the rest of it?
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
All right. So let me frame it this way. A part of what would have happened is we had an economy that deflated because the export sector shut down. Our principal export sector, our principal export earning is tourism. That's our export. People always say we don't export anything, but we export a service, tourism.
Right.
That shut down for 9 months. What has happened, though, fortunately, over the last 4 months is we've seen an opening back of the economy. That's why our numbers went down from 35,000 sort of people unemployed at thereabouts down to 25,000 people without the government having to do anything else but doing their best to keep the employee in the economy open. As we are seeing now, and the Ministry of Tourism will talk about this, the Prime Minister foreshadowed it, is we are seeing our advanced bookings continue to increase. More airlift, British Airways just came in. Air Canada expects to return back in July. A number of U.S. airlines are returning. We have the Point property opening up in the summer. So what's happening organically is that the economy is opening back up. We have a reflation of the economy. So that by itself will bring, because of course these places open back up, the workers go back to work. In addition to that, to turbocharge that, what the Prime Minister announced is an employment incentive program based on the very successful employment retention program that the government ran during Resilient Bahamas. So in this new iteration, the government is saying that starting July, for every net new employee you add to your payroll, let's say that your radio station now decides they want to bring in back employees, because businesses, you see business coming back, but it's still tentative. The government will give them a tax credit that up to 10 employees to bring people back onto work. So that we budget that'll bring on about 2,500 people in a very, very direct way. So that's just to direct stimulate people getting back into jobs. So that combined with the reflation of the economy, just again from us being able to get into more open stances as North America gets more vaccinated and people get more confident traveling, that is what will start to address that unemployment program. In addition to that, the government also announced the provisions for small businesses, the relaxation of duties and board of taxes on application. That will allow small businesses to be able to expand, get into business, and of course, you know yourself as an entrepreneur at heart that catalyzing small businesses, making it easier for them to get into business, making it cheaper, giving them the access to capital through the SBDC. That in of itself, you empower 500 of them, you create 5,000 jobs.
Let's talk about that VAT credit.
Right.
I think that's the program that you're describing now.
Right.
So I want you to explain in detail how the $400 per week for VAT credit will work for small businesses in particular?
So first, it'd have to be a VAT registered business. So this is really for VAT registered. These are businesses who gross $100,000 a year or more, which is most businesses who are VAT registered. So all that would mean is that as they collect their VAT, they are able to apply a credit for every new employee they bring on. So what that would essentially mean is, I'm a small business, I charge VAT, I get to keep the VAT up to $400 per week for every new employee that I bring on. So in essence, the government would be paying the salary for those persons that they bring on. If you are a small business and you do not fall in that VAT threshold, then what you will have is you have access to the Small Business Development Center for some of the grants and continuity loans or recovery loans, because they were continuity loans during the event. Now they'll be recovery loans to help you sort of reflate your own particular business if you are in that category who does not charge VAT and who wouldn't qualify for that particular program. The emphasis is on generating employment. So it will be those things that will allow a small business to be able to get in business or stay in business, and in the case for some of them small and medium-sized businesses, to be able to bring on additional people.
So I have a question as it relates to that program. If I were to start a business, a small business, right, and I want to bring an employee online to assist in accelerating my growth, generally speaking, I don't start out with $200,000 a year.
100,000, yeah, but yeah.
So, but here's my point. How does a small business deal with the lack of funding to cover payroll if one employee requires you to be making,
So Michelle, not every,
requires you to be making 100,000.
No. So let me be clear. So right now, during when we had the business recovery loan, small businesses can today apply for grants and loans to cover them. So let's use that scenario. I am a startup business. I have 0 employees. I have 0 income. I don't qualify for that bad credit program, but that don't mean there's nothing in the budget for me. I can go to the SBDC and I can apply for a business continuity, part of the business continuity initiative, which can include and does include both grants and loans. So you could then subscribe to get the grant component to assist you with some element of your business and the loan to assist you with others. So there are facilities for even the smallest single self-employed entrepreneur to be able to get on board. And one of the successes of the SBDC is really being able to combine both grants and loans for businesses who are just starting out as a single person. So there is a path for even the small business and the self-employed person.
Okay. All right. Let's look at somebody sending me a text that says you have to have $200,000 in revenue for VAT credit for one employee.
That's not true. That's absolutely untrue. Now, I don't know where they get that from. We haven't even formulated the rules yet. What in order to be, first of all, let me let your small business people know, there is no minimum requirement to become a VAT registrant. Any business can sign up and become a VAT registrant, and I encourage a lot of small businesses to do so that they can get credit back for the VATs that they pay out. So a lot of businesses, that actually can help their cash flow because they can offset a lot of their outgoing VAT costs themselves. So no, you don't have to meet a threshold to become a VAT registrant. We have a number of businesses who do not meet a $100,000 threshold who become a VAT registrant because they understand why that's advantageous for them. So there's no minimum requirement. And in this new procedure, what we're saying is that as long as you're a VAT registrant, if you're making a $10,000 or $15,000, yes, you could become a VAT registrant. You will then be able to charge VAT and you'll be able to use the credit. So there's no requirement or any minimum size to join this program. All of the requirements, you have to be a VAT registrant. But that said, I want to be clear that that won't be suited for the micro business. But there are other opportunities that businesses can take advantage of within the context of the programs that are available.
What is the plan? Do you have any information on the plan for all of the students who will be leaving school who are going to add to this growing pool of people who are going to be seeking work?
So not specific. No, not specifically. No, what the challenge we have before us is to open up as quickly as we can. We open up as quickly as we can by a number of persons becoming vaccinated. We open up as quickly as we can by adhering to the social protocols. And the extent to which we can open up the economy is where we can get more businesses open and unopened later. So the notion is by reflating the economy. There are no specific plans, at least none been articulated yet, for school leavers, other than I want, and this is a good time to remind school leavers that BTVI is now free for full-time behaving school graduates as well as UB. So one of the opportunities that they can have, if there are no employment opportunities, there is an opportunity to go to BTVI or UB. And if they're coming in from the Family Islands, they can also get a stipend as well to help take care of them while they're in school. So there's that educational element, but the ambition, and this is why we're talking about, or the government has talked about accelerating the growth, is to do those things that will get businesses open faster and getting people employed.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Let me reset because I was sort of thrown off this morning because my laptop sort of had a mini crash episode.
No, I understand.
And it's just not coming back up. So let's take a quick commercial break. Let me reset, and then we'll continue this conversation. My guest today is Marlon Johnson. We are talking about the 2021-2022 budget. Stay with us. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Glory 93.9 FM. We're chasing after God's glory.
Best dress, hats off, looking like I walked out of catalog. Everybody wanna know where I got it from. Catwalk, 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 boutique, where we make fashion statements. Catwalk, boutique, where we make fashion statements.
For the latest styles in women's clothing and accessories, visit Catwalk Boutique on Robertson Road East at the Hellron Plaza. At Catwalk Boutique, we make fashion statements.
For all your building needs, it's Carib Construction and Project Management on Gladstone Road. We build it all: schools, homes, hotels, and more, including structures requiring a Phase 3 electrical contractor. We also provide project management services. The first step towards your dream building begins at Carib Construction and Project Management. Call us at 376-1556 or 341-4466.
Executive Printers is your one-stop shop for all your branding and customization needs. Letterheads, envelopes, business cards, invoices, share and gift certificates, rubber stamps, vouchers, funeral programs, brochures, flyers, banners, and promotional items like mugs, water bottles, mouse pads, and key rings, all with personable service and great quality. No project is too small or too large. For great turnaround and competitive pricing, make an executive decision. Call us at 393-5011.
At Lee Air, safety is our #1 priority. Flying since 1996, we offer scheduled flights into Fresh Creek and Mangrove Key Andros and Great Harbor Key, Berry Island, twice daily, 7 days a week. Affordable charter services are also available to anywhere in the Bahamas and the Caribbean. Lee Air Charter Services. Call 225-3267, 702-7127, or 322-1317 for reservations.
Your body's immune system is under constant pressure from things like stress, lack of exercise, and toxins in the environment. It's crucial to be proactive and support your immune system with the nutrients it needs to function effectively. But it's often hard to get these nutrients from food alone. Introducing fast-acting Zinc Plus Immune Support by Longevity. Unlike zinc-only supplements, Zinc Plus Immune Support builds on the proven power of zinc and adds complementary nutrients to give your immune system extra support. Vitamin D helps balance the effects of zinc, while our proprietary blend of natural fruit and root extracts provides the extra help your immune system needs to work against daily stressors. And we've included Longevity's exclusive plant-derived minerals to give your body the minerals it needs, but can't get from food alone. And because Zinc Plus Immune Support is delivered in a great-tasting, sugar-free, berry-flavored lozenge, it encourages quicker absorption of all these nutrients into your body. Zinc Plus Immune Support. Zinc plus the extra support your body needs to promote a healthy immune system. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Alive. Alive. Believe in best. And by Tropical Euros. Not just good food, it's an experience.
And we are back. Welcome back to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm. My guest today is Marlon Johnson, and we are discussing the 2021-2022 budget communication, the debate now going on in the House of Assembly. I would like you, Marlon, to explain how were the economic growth and revenue growth figures arrived at? Are these growth comparisons to a previous year or the success of pre-COVID numbers? And I'd like you to explain this in layman's terms, please.
Sure. So the numbers that we're projecting is no different from the numbers that we provided in the fiscal strategy report that was laid in December of last year. So, and what those numbers are based on is the anticipation that we will see a slow but steady reflation of the economy. And what that means is that we understand that the economy certainly is compromised because of COVID in particular. But we also understand that unlike, say, if it was a hurricane, we didn't suffer any catastrophic damage to infrastructure. So what it anticipates is that over the next course of the year, we will be able to reflate the economy back to probably around 70 to 75% of what it was by the time we get to the next July 2022. So it doesn't assume that the economy is going to come back to 100%. The projections don't assume that we're going to get back to our full pre-COVID strength till sometime in 2023 or thereabouts. But it assumes a slow reflation of the economy. One of the promising developments on this, Michelle, is that since December, we have actually been overperforming our revenue budget, which means that early in the year, we were when things were shut down during the first quarter of the fiscal year, we were underperforming, but we've caught that up and now exceeded it. So we feel very, very confident that our projections are spot on and could be met simply from the evidence we're seeing in the most recent quarter going back to December.
What are you basing your assumptions on?
As I say again, we are assuming that the economy will reflate slowly based on what we have been seeing. So let me frame it this way. As you project forward, you have to make certain core assumptions. The core assumption is, will we continue to have a pandemic going into future years, or will the pandemic situation subside? Our core projection is that the pandemic situation will subside over time. That's the core assumption. So, for example, and the best way to explain this is if we have a sudden relapse and we go into full shutdown mode, then our projection would be wrong. Based on what we see, the emergence of the vaccination, the uptake of the vaccination in North America, the willingness of people to travel, we base our projection that we will see a slow and steady return to some measure of normalcy throughout the course of the new fiscal year. We would be wrong if that does not materialize, but there's no evidence to suggest that's a concern at this time. You have over 50% of U.S. adults and U.S. Canadians who have their first shot of the vaccination. As they're getting vaccinated, as we saw over the Memorial holidays, they are traveling. There's a lot of pent-up demand. And so that is why the tourism numbers have been returning. We anticipate that will continue, not to the pace where it was in prior years, because we still don't have the cruise industry intact. There's still going to be some reticence of people to travel, but sufficiently enough to see a reflation of the economy. Don't mean that we get back to normal or that we're anywhere close to normal, but we will get to 70% or so of that by the time we get to the end of the new fiscal year.
What are the actual measurable economic indicators, or is this based purely on assumption?
So it's a very good question. We look at things like revenue intake, we look at the revenue growth, we look at the tourism numbers, we look at our other export numbers, we look at the numbers in the financial sector, in the banking sector, we look at the money supply, we look at the things like the size of credit growth, the number of delinquencies. There's a whole laundry list of indicators that help inform where we believe the economy is going, and we base our projections on those trends. So that and we are going to refine that by virtue of the exercise we talked about the last time I was on the show, where we're going to refine that into a very, very detailed econometrics model. So that we will be able to do it in an academic way. We're not quite there yet, but from since I started the ministry back in '91 as a little pup to now, we have metrics that we use to base this on. This isn't just Marlon think we could be here or somebody think we could do this. No, it never has worked that way, and it doesn't work that way now.
Now, you brought up the topic of vaccines, so I'm going to touch on that because, that's my pet peeve. Why are we depending on vaccines as a threshold to successful reopening when we don't really have enough to meet herd immunity? Why are we relying on vaccines?
So we are our contingent is about what's happening in the U.S. and Canada. As their populations get more vaccinated, they are more inclined to travel. So it's really on their side. On our side, what our population getting to herd immunity or getting to substantially vaccinated allows us to do. It allows us to have the confidence that we can, for instance, open later, drop the curfew and do more entertainment type of things. We don't have the vaccinations in stock now, but we do know that by the July, for example, the United States would have had its full supply of vaccines provided to them. And once that is done, it frees up all that capacity, that manufacturing capacity that Pfizer and Moderna have, to be able to turn their attention to other markets, and which they will look to do so. So we feel very, very confident that certainly going into the new fiscal year, any supply elements that we don't have, we'll be able to fill over the summer. So there's no concern on our part that we will be able to get them in, and so that's why we got some comfort level there. But even let's say that's sluggish. We know that the trouble really is generated by our source markets, and our source markets have sufficient vaccines and sufficient interest that will allow their vaccinated. Because that's what we saw. As soon as Americans started to get vaccinated, the travel interest picked up. That's why we know in March April we had the numbers were 200% higher than they were in January. We know that, for example, in Airbnb, we're not guessing this. We know that Airbnb's March bookings was 70% not of their 2020 number, but of their 2019 number. And that was up from 44% of that corresponding number in just January. So you start to see that Airbnb is up to already now in March, up to 70% of where it was year on year in the pre-COVID term. We don't guess these things, Michelle. There's empirical numbers to back up why we feel a certain way.
What is the plan for building a new economy? Economic recovery plan has yet to be made public. We touched on this the last time you were on the show. You said that you did your job, and it's not up to you to decide what they do with the information that you provided to them, but it has yet to be made public, the full report. Nor has the reef plan for Grand Bahama been made public. And quite frankly, the Prime Minister did not.
I know where that comment came from. Good to hear from him. So the question on the reef one. But that's okay. The comment on the ERC report, even though the full report hasn't been made public, it's an articulation of what's in the summary report. So if you read the summary report, what you'll see in the full report is just the backups to the summary recommendations. But you're right. Let me finish the point, then I'll let you talk. All I'm saying is that, and I agree, we have sent it on to the OPM, and then for the OPM to come up. Your core question, though, is what's the plan for the new economy? That's your question.
Because the Prime Minister has yet to specify, he's yet to specifically speak to an economic recovery plan, even in this budget. So
Right. It's okay. Well, you got to take that up with him. Your question, what was your question? No, I missed your question.
I got to take it up with him. You're the financial secretary.
Yes, but you're asking about the Prime Minister's economic recovery plan. I only can speak to what's actually in the budget.
Oh my God. Wow, that's deep. Okay. The last time you were here, you said the government would consider cutting. No government would consider cutting employees at this time because of the state of the economy. Considering the fiscal restraints that we are in, though, and the fact that the government has asked government ministries, corporations, and subsidiaries to carry their own load, will government continue to subsidize them, or will they now have to face the possibility of delivering pink slips to all those employees?
So that's a policy question, but what I can state is what the government has stated. The government has said that its plans during the last budget and the current budget is to retain employees. The reason for that, despite the obvious, is also economic. And I just want to rehash why that is important. And if I said that no government would fire, let me correct myself. I can't say if the government would or wouldn't. What I said is that the government stated that its intention is not to let people go. And the reason for that is economic, because again, when you're battling 25, 30% unemployment in an economy, you don't want to exasperate that by laying off more people. You want to keep as many people employed. So that was the strategy, that remains the strategy. What the government also said last budget was that over time, it will look to scale back subventions to state-owned enterprises by $100 million. So we'll be doing about $400 million a year now in subventions to the, by subventions I mean subsidies to the state-owned enterprises over a 3 or 4 year period to scale that back by $100 million. What that will mean is that those state-owned enterprises will have to make that up by becoming more efficient and by moving to greater use of what we call cost recovery. The fees have to support them. The initial discussions already underway are with Bahamas Air, which did a fee adjustment in January, and with water and sewage, which has signaled that the water rates will have to go up. So what you will likely see, to answer your question directly, is a combination of things. Over time, you're going to see some of those fees charged by the state-owned enterprises, their fees and tariffs will be adjusted upward, and they will also at the same time have to generate operational efficiencies, which means that they may have to do some sort of headcount rationalization exercise down the road. But what the approach has been of successive governments is, in those instances, is to go to talk to the unions, talk to the employees, and find a way that if that becomes necessary, to do that disengagement in a way that's amenable to all the stakeholders. But that isn't anything imminent, simply because the goal in the plan is to retain employment until the economy stabilizes.
Okay. So in other words, we're continuing to carry the load for the civil service, and the bulk of borrowing that we do is said to cover that load, the civil service and government employees. So seeing that digitization and innovation reduce the need for workers, my question to you is there a plan to move toward further embracing technology to reduce the dependence on the aging workforce?
Absolutely. So I think that's the ultimate goal. That as you start to digitize, one of the advantages the government has is that it has a workforce that average age is probably north of 50. So as you digitize and these people exit the system, what it does allow you to do is not to have to replace them with more clerical staff. So you will see the move that as we move to more digitization, the needs for clerical staff over time will diminish. Now, in the meantime, the good news for clerks through the public service is that there are decades worth of stuff to be cataloged and digitized. So as these agencies sort of move in digitization, a lot of their staff for the next couple of years are going to be digitizing, scanning files. Some of them go back to our parents and grandparents to bring them into the fold to digitize all of that element. So there's still a decade worth of work to be done in just digitizing. But as they now exit the system, what the government has indicated is that you're going to see a more professional public service, meaning people who have degrees, persons, or expertise in specific fields, and less clerical needs because of digitization.
Now, there is an elephant in the room that I think we need to address. It is said that we have $5 billion pension liability that no one seems willing to talk about for whatever reason. Now, this non-contributory pension liability stretches across government corporations and the civil service. And this is paid from the consolidated fund on a monthly basis. So what will be done to offset or fix this when the government workforce is reduced?
That's a very good question. So what we have done is we went out, we did an RFP, which KPMG, I think, yes, KPMG won. And they're actually doing a study that they will be wrapping up, if not this month, next month, that looks at the pension liability for both the central government as well as the state-owned enterprises. And as that study is completed, they will give a very thorough, clear, an update, because it was done before, several years ago. They will do an updated view of where the government stands as far as its pension liability and what needs to happen. What the government has already signaled publicly, to answer your question directly, is that clearly we're going to have to adjust the way in which we do pensions. Right now, we have a defined benefit pension. It's likely we're going to have to move to defined contribution approach, at least for people coming in. But once you understand what the dimensions of that number is, and that study will reveal that, then we can start to take very deliberate action to making sure we are funding it or finding whether we front loaded, back loaded, or how we finance it. And so I think by the time you and I talk again on the show, you'll probably have something more definitive to say about what the recommendations coming forward is and what the government will decide to do. But you're right, it is a pressing matter. We do project it in our numbers. We don't ignore the pension liability. If you go to our fiscal strategy report in our numbers, we account for it. But you're right, it's something that has to be addressed. But however they address it, this is still a 20-25 year out solution before you get to a point where your defined contribution numbers are higher than your defined benefit numbers.
Is that pension liability included in our national debt?
Yeah, well, no, because it isn't funded that way. It's funded from our direct subvention. So where it is accounted for is accounted for in our projections. But it isn't a debt because nothing is crystallized about it. What we have to do when we project it forward is we have to know how that is moving. So in our fiscal strategy report, that we make sure that we account for it in the forward years. So it is accounted for, even though it isn't crystallized as a debt.
Okay, I want to go back to something you said a moment ago. You said that I have to ask the PM about the economic recovery plan. That you obviously you guys did your job. You put the information in there, but I have to ask the PM pretty much.
No. Before this becomes a meme, let me be clear what I'm saying. All right. What I'm saying is that you asked for a specific economic recovery plan.
Right.
What our job was to do was to give the government recommendations. We've done that and we've submitted the full reports. You're asking about the full reports. What I mean is that the OPM would have to be the one approached about getting the full reports. The government's plans are articulated in the documents that it sent forward. The PM referenced what he would have done, the elements of the economic recovery plan that he would have taken on that the cabinet agreed to in his plan. But if you want something over and above that, it would be to his office that would have to be addressed. So I just want to be clear before all of a sudden this becomes a talking point. I will make sure I'm clear what I'm saying.
Okay. All right. No, I'll move on from now on then, because I wanted to know if there was a conflict, because it seems that you're only on the same page as it relates to this.
No, not at all. There cannot be a conflict because our job is to provide recommendations. The government's job is to look at the suite of recommendations, and the recommendations are out there in summary form, so that persons can look at the economic recovery report, and they can look and see the extent to which the governments take it. But just like any of those kinds of entities, it's the government of the day that has to make the determination which of the recommendations it will take on and which of the recommendations it will or it won't do at this particular time. What we are proud of, because I can put on my ERC cap though, is that a number of the recommendations have found its way into the government's plan already. So the committee is pleased to see that.
Okay. All righty. Let us move on. So we obviously have a housing crisis in this country. Mm-hmm. And it all comes out of the government social safety net, correct?
Yeah, when you say we have a housing crisis, what do you mean?
Well, people out of their homes, people who have not been able to maintain their standard of living because of the loss of job. People have been displaced. So we have a housing crisis. I think that's pretty straightforward.
No, I mean, if a housing crisis, I know, I'm not trying to be difficult. I don't understand what you mean by that. Housing crisis mean that people are being thrown out of their homes. They don't have homes, and what numbers? There has been a situation, obviously, where people haven't worked, that they've fallen behind in their mortgages and the like. But all that's reported in the central bank statistics as far as defaults and the like. So we haven't seen a marked move there because banks have issued forbearance on people who've been displaced, and I don't know of, but I stand to be corrected of any mass numbers of people who have lost their housing. Now, what you have is a lot of people who are behind on their mortgage, and certainly there's a number of people.
Because if you look at what is happening between Dorian, COVID, etc.,
right?
You got about 100,000 people of the workforce who are still in limbo, suspended mode. Thousands of mortgages.
No, but again, let's go. It's not 100. See, again, this is why I want us to be judicious in our use of numbers. We walked through early in your show what the unemployment numbers were like. It's not hundreds of thousands of people. So I want us to be careful in the numbers we use. We have presently, somewhere between 25 to 30,000 people, give or take 5,000, who are displaced presently. It isn't 100,000, it isn't 50%. So I just want to make sure that when we use numbers judiciously. The number is way too high. There are people who are in distress with their mortgage and who are in distress with their rent.
Mortgage payments, school fees.
School fees because they've been out of a job exactly for a year. But when you say a housing crisis, that's specific. So that's why I wanted to quantify
but here's
that.
something though, Marlon, because you're talking about 25,000 people out of work, right? That's 25,000 people, but that also impacts 25,000 families.
Yes,
which is more than just that one person.
Absolutely.
So you can't just say, "Oh, it's only 25,000."
No. I didn't. I never said that. You never used the word only. What I said is that you mentioned 100,000 people. All I wanted to do is give the correct number, and I said the number is probably somewhere around 25,000 to 30,000, which is a distressing number. It isn't an only number. So I just want to be clear because I am concerned when I hear numbers bandied about, like 50% unemployment and 100,000 people displaced. That we have no evidence to support that. So I want us to be judicious to scope the problem correctly because 25,000 persons is a big number, but it isn't 100,000 people. So that's why I am.
Let's separate persons from workers. I think that would help us in this discussion if we separate persons from workers. Right. So according to your what you're saying to us today, there are 25,000 workers who have been displaced, but those 25,000 workers have families. So we're talking about more than 25,000 people being impacted by this problem. Okay, so that I think that's that's
it's a massive number of people. Yes, I got you. But I only I don't want to get sidetracked. When you said we have an issue with people who can't pay their rent and people who can't pay their mortgages. Again, that's different from a housing crisis. That's why I just want us to be judicious in the terms we use. So all right.
Okay, so I didn't hear anything in the budget. Right. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't hear anything in the budget regarding details of how the government will address the increased demand on the social safety net, considering that there will still be large numbers of families. I'm not going to call any numbers, but large numbers of families who will still be facing some form of distress, whether it's a housing issue or work or food or health. When the program. The unemployment assistance program comes to an end in September. Right. So what gives there?
So the unemployment program was started as a program that was supposed to last for 3 to 4 months. It was budgeted at about $68 million, I think it was, and it is now run up to $120 million because the government extended it given circumstances. In the budget, again, assuming that the economy continues to reflate, and you have the projects like. We have Atlantis 2 Towers. They was, going into the summer, hopefully open up. You're gonna have the water park at Bahamar. You have the Point project opening up. So you're gonna have some people coming back to work, cruising, whether inside the Bahamas or even from Florida. Late summer will start to resume. So you're working on the assumption that that $25,000 number of people who currently getting supply, by the time we get to September, that number will shrink by some measure. So what the government has done in its budget is it has added the sum of $20 million in additional funding to social services, so that by the end of September, if there are still people who require assistance, the social services will be in a position for them to migrate over to social services, and social services being able to take over a measure of that. But just as has happened in this current budget, depending on the circumstances, the government could look at the situation and say, listen, we may need to extend this out further, and as such, we have to readjust the budget to accommodate that. So that's still within the realm of possibilities, but based on where we see the economy reflecting to, and the government accepted that by the time we get to September, you'll have again the sort of decline in your unemployment numbers, and those who remain, the government would have made an additional allocation to social services to be able to accommodate them in the social safety net and wind down the unemployment program. One of the fortunate things in the Bahamas is that we have been able to carry it now for 19 months. A lot of jurisdictions, they had been forced to shut it down just for lack of resources. So we were able to, within this budget, move around some allocations, delay some things in order to address the government's policy priority in that respect.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with Financial Secretary Marlon Johnson about the 2021-2022 budget communication now being debated before the House of Assembly. Stay with us. This is GPS on Glory 93.9 FM.
Ocean blue is the best in seafood, fresh out the water and affordable too, yeah. We got fish, conch, lobster, shrimp, everything you want. Ocean blue got it. Ocean blue, friendly and clean, best service you ever seen. Ocean blue is the best in seafood, fresh out the water and affordable too, Ocean blue seafood, we are here for you. Ocean blue seafood, no one else will do. Ocean Blue Seafood, located on Burnett Road. Contact us at 393-2160.
Looking for an extraordinary junior high school with caring, qualified staff and affordable tuition? Then come visit us at Elite School of Excellence, an affiliate of First Step Academy. ABECA-focused and Ministry of Education approved, we foster discipline, integrity, and wisdom while molding our students for success. Call us at 341-8846 or stop by First Step Academy Schools on Fire Trail and Soldy Roads for more information.
At the Shirley Street Plaza, you'll find Le Petit Gourmet, a small cafe that's big on flavor. Handcrafted delights made with love will not only please your palate, but feed your soul. Call us at 394-1251. 8 to 12 minutes is all it takes for a burglar to rob your home or business. Security Systems International provides professional and affordable solutions for both. Call 396-5000 for your customized quote. Gwen's Alterations provides professional services for all your tailoring needs, including face masks to keep you safe and in style. A stitch in time saves 9. So call us today at 393-6227.
Escape from the city life to Bacon Air Beach Resort in Pirateswell, Mayaguana. Relax in one of 16 air-conditioned rooms just steps away from the ocean. Enjoy scrumptious dishes in our waterfront dining room. Sip on a tropical cocktail, or if you must, stay connected with wireless internet. Nestled on one of the most beautiful beaches in the Bahamas, Bacon Air Beach Resort offers a unique vacation experience. For reservations, call 339-3726 or 463-0182.
Your body's immune system is under constant pressure from things like stress, lack of exercise, and toxins in the environment. It's crucial to be proactive and support your immune system with the nutrients it needs to function effectively. But it's often hard to get these nutrients from food alone. Introducing fast-acting Zinc Plus Immune Support by Longevity. Unlike zinc-only supplements, Zinc Plus Immune Support builds on the proven power of zinc and adds complementary nutrients to give your immune system extra support. Vitamin D helps balance the effects of zinc, while our proprietary blend of natural fruit and root extracts provides the extra help your immune system needs to work against daily stressors. And we've included Longevity's exclusive plant-derived minerals to give your body the minerals it needs, but can't get from food alone. And because Zinc Plus Immune Support is delivered in a great-tasting sugar-free berry-flavored lozenge, it encourages quicker absorption of all these nutrients into your body. Zinc Plus Immune Support. Zinc plus the extra support your body needs to promote a healthy immune system. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Bahamas Orthodontic Center, celebrating 30 years of designing and creating beautiful smiles.
And we are back. Welcome back to GPS on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm, and my guest today is Financial Secretary Marlon Johnson. We're talking about the 2021-2022 budget, and I want to go to a couple of comments. We have a lot of comments right now. I was sort of ignoring the comments because I was trying to get in as much as I could, but I still have quite a few more questions that I prepared to ask you. But let's see what our audience is saying. Where did it go? Ian Gilbert is taking task with the figure of 25,000, and he is saying you can't use those facts. That's those applying. Many unemployed don't qualify, so those numbers are around 45 to 50%. How do you respond to that, Marlon?
Well, under the unemployment benefit program by the government, even persons who do not normally apply for, who qualify for NIB insurance, including people who don't meet the minimum threshold or already exhausted it, they're still eligible. So what we have in that number is a lot of people who would not normally apply for NIB. It isn't a precise number. So because we haven't had the opportunity to do unemployment, but we can gauge from that and from people who pursue social services what the numbers like. So I don't want it to leave the impression that I'm trying to understate the severity of the unemployment program. Even if it's only 25%, it's still as a 1/4 year workforce. It's a very, very high number because we're dealing with an extreme crisis. So I don't want to leave the impression that I'm just trying to underplay it. The only point I was making is that we feel very confident it is not 50% unemployment. We'd have a very different country if we were at 50% unemployment.
Okay, so Graham has a question. Graham Rutherford is asking, trying to get it to come up. Okay, how do we help businesses with a $1,200 electricity bill?
So I don't know what the context of that is, but what I can say is that you would recall that we are one of the very few small utilities in the world, and people can Google this, who have a fuel hedge program in place. So, and what that fuel hedge program has allowed BPL to do is been able to lock in a surcharge cost of 10.5 cents per kilowatt hour and keep that in place for a minimum of 18 months. So what that has meant for Bahamian consumers, business consumers or residential consumers, is that they don't have the fluctuations in electricity prices that they used to have. So what would have happened under the old regime is as oil prices spike, that we feeling it now in our tanks when we go to fill up, and gas is over $5, we would have seen that same spiral happening in the summertime for BPL. So now the same rate you've been paying in the winter, same rate you pay in the summer, and for most people, what they would have seen is that in the year on year, on average, their electricity price has gone down. So that's the step the governments have taken in the near term to help them manage the electricity cost. The long term is as Graham would know, he's been a big proponent of this, is transitioning to renewable and cheaper sources of fuel. But in the meantime, at least for the next 18 to 24 months, we know that our fuel surcharge will be 10.5 cents and remain that. And a lot of people, certainly my light bill, has moderated as a result of that.
Graham also says, sounds like full panic mode, throwing crap at the wall and hoping something sticks. Any response to Graham on that?
And I appreciate Graham's opinion on the matter. I can say no, that nobody here is panicking at all. At all. What I want people to understand, I think imagine we had a hurricane. We've seen Hurricane 5 Dorian hit Abaco. We've seen that cost us $3.5 billion impact. What the pandemic was a Category 5 hurricane hitting the entire country. But because the devastation of that isn't as visceral as a hurricane devastation, where you see buildings falling down and people dying in vast numbers and the land dislocation of that.
Right.
It's hard to internalize how catastrophic this last year has been. But even with that, Bahamians, this isn't the government, Bahamians have demonstrated resiliency, willingness to work together. A lot of you, I'm sure you, Michelle, have given, out of your own pocket and help family, help friends, as many thousands of Bahamians. And I say all that to say that we have just gone through a Category 5 storm that hit the whole country and stayed over the country for months. Yet, even with that, we have been able to see our way through. And that's why you see the deficit number so big. And this is what hurricane, nobody will be questioning the government's $900 million deficit, $1.3 billion deficit, because they'll be able to see the devastation. But because the devastation isn't so visceral, it's hard for people to understand why the government has to take these extraordinary steps to keep an economy going and to shepherd the country through until things stabilize.
We have a caller on the line. Caller, welcome to GPS.
How you doing, Michelle?
Great. How are you?
Awesome. And good afternoon now. I was with you from in the morning. I end my morning and start my afternoon with GPS.
Okay.
Live.
All right.
I love it. I just love it. And good afternoon now to your guest. Mr. Marlon Johnson, are you the financial secretary or are you the assistant financial secretary? Just for point of information.
My substantive post is deputy financial secretary and acting financial secretary. So my substantive post is deputy financial secretary.
Michelle, you can hear me?
Yes, we listening.
I'm asking him a question. I want to hear his answer.
He already answered you. You can't hear him?
Oh, I didn't hear him. Could he repeat?
Yeah, I'm the deputy financial secretary of my
I didn't hear. So let me move on. Let me move on.
Okay.
The point here I'm making is when I analyze, the national debt and our country's resources, the main resources being its people, who's the ones who are feeling the repercussions for decisions being made on my behalf, on your behalf, on our behalf, that's egregious. Okay, let me just say that. It's egregious because, you speak about the deficit, okay, but yet you do not put a greater focus on those Bahamian companies, okay, the Bahamian companies now, that are directly involved in tourism, okay, and I'm talking about from the small level up, right up. For example, when I said, Michelle, that the government made a mistake when they brought in such a large hotel investment like Atlantis, okay, rejecting the small boutique hotels we had that brought our tourism economy to where it was. Wrong decisions in that respect have cost us. And so I'm saying to Mr. Marlon Johnson, because I can't say the financial or assistant, I don't know, I didn't hear. But the point here is a greater focus must be placed on all Bahamian small companies, emphasizing the word very small, extra small.
Micro.
I can let you run, Michelle.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for calling. How do you respond to that, Marlon?
He gives his opinion, so that's fine. That's fine. I won't seek to opine on his opinion. I can only say that in the Accelerated Bahamas Plan, one of the dimensions of it was to ensure that every entrepreneur and every small business get the kinds of concessions and tax breaks that had been usually reserved for larger Bahamian investments, manufacturing, the hospitality sector. So that now, to his point about doing for small businesses, every small business can now apply for and get concessions, tax concessions on their duties when they want to bring in elements to build or expand their business and equip their businesses. So that's just to his point that doing for the smallest of the small businesses.
Okay. All right. We have a lot of comments, but I'm going to get back to the comments in a minute. I just want to get back to some of the questions that I had prepared for you. I want to turn the attention now. Oh, we have another caller. Let me go back to the phone lines. Caller, welcome to GPS.
I'm sorry, Michelle, for calling back so sudden. But the point, I think he missed my point. I'm talking with this very small, small businesses involved in tourism that accept and receive U.S. money, okay, from the U.S. tourists, emphasizing fundamentally and primarily from United States of America tourists. Those businesses who I'm talking about when I say micro. Why? Because many can help one, okay? Many of us together in that economy can help this one Bahamian tourist economy. Because we know America wants the Bahamian people, okay, to be workers. And that's a dominant country, and I agree with them. We should be workers in the country, but we should also own our economy that we're working in and working for on behalf of those who have the money to afford to come here legally and legitimately. Thank you again, Michelle. I gone.
All right. Thank you so much for calling back again, Amos. Marlon has already stated that he's not going to opine on your opinion, so so we're going to move on. Okay, but speaking of tourism, because that is actually the direction I wanted to go into next, the need for additional rooms and supporting services in the tourism sector has been highlighted for years, so this is nothing new. Only $2 million has been allocated in this budget for small business development center funding of bread and breakfast establishments. How many of these establishments can $2 million realistically help?
I smiled because nothing in the budget said. What the Prime Minister, I'm getting the feedback again from your technical folks. I don't know if they opened the line or something. Okay, right now it's fixed.
Okay.
So what the Prime Minister said still getting it a little bit, but it's better. What the Prime Minister said is that he has instructed the small business center to set up a minimum of $2 million to support Bahamians looking to get into the vacation home rental market. It isn't a maximum number. It doesn't stop Bahamians who want to get into bed and breakfast or hotel development or resorts development to access any of the other $35 million that's been set aside for them. They're off through the Bahamas Development Bank or other facilities. It's just saying that there is a carve out for Bahamians who want to get into the vacation home rental market. The truth is this, is that on Airbnb alone, there are over 4,000 Bahamians and Bahamian residents who have their properties listed without any government support. But the government, I think, recognizes that there are those who would get into it with their existing home, with an ancestral home, but may need some support in terms of a loan guarantee or other help to help them get into that business. Because most people who got into it have simply cleaned up the place and signed up. That's why you have Airbnb throughout the length and breadth of Nassau in some very traditional environment, and some very traditional neighborhoods as well. But what the government has said is recognizing that that's an opportunity for Bahamians to own. It has asked the SBD to set aside a minimum of that amount to help persons doing that. Now, $2 million don't mean it's just only $2 million of support, because what the SBDC may be able to do is leverage that, and they can work with financial institutions and say, listen, what kind of what we call leverage ratios can we do with that? I don't want to get too technical, but they can say that $2 million may be able to support $4 million of loan, because in these cases, people have equity in their properties that they could also leverage. So you can make that pot a lot bigger. But even if it's only that, a lot of people don't need a lot of money to get into this, because you don't have to be on the waterfront. A lot of people have existing homes. They just need to fix it up. They need to understand how to get into it, and people can get into that business. And it's been a quiet success for many years of Bahamians. $14 million from Airbnb revenues alone in the month of March. The last full fiscal year before the pandemic, Airbnb revenues were around $170 million in the country. Some of that is going to people, second homeowners for sure, but a lot of that is going to Bahamians, ordinary Bahamians who converted their properties or converted a room to one of those platforms. So it's a wonderful opportunity. I wanted to get your listeners to think about that. Do I have spare rooms in my house to do that? Do I have connections in the family island? Can I get together in a group and create an investment club and pool my resources, present a presentation to government and say, we would like to get into this? I have common property. There is an opportunity, and I think what I would want to see, I hope to see, is ordinary Bahamians pooling together. Because in larger numbers, you can approach an SBDC, and you could do some great things in the space and become owners in the industry, as a lot of Bahamians are already doing.
Okay, so let's look beyond. I'm glad you pointed out the minimum of $2 million, and let's look at the $35 million that has been earmarked for the SBDC to assist in this vein. Do you think that $35 million is sufficient to rebuild the $1 billion in revenue that the government has lost, as well as resuscitate or rebuild thousands of businesses that are closed and facing the real prospect of not reopening?
No, of course not. $35 million couldn't do that. It isn't intended to do that. Let's again take a pause. Let's look at where we was several years ago. We had $1 million to $2 million in budgets chronically supporting small businesses. Since the SBDC was started up, and because of the Dorian and because of COVID, that went from a $25 million pledge over 5 years to over $60 million spent. So is that enough? No, you can argue a lot more. But we had a small business community prior to that support. We have one even if that support doesn't exist. What an SBDC does in the Bahamas or any other country is to try to support those who don't have the capital and cannot access capital sufficiently. So it is a catalyst. It isn't to replace or make something to happen. The government, like all governments, is constrained by the circumstances it is in. Can it reflate the economy in full? No, it can't. But again, within the boundaries of what's affordable, and again, having to throw the ball really long and run up substantial deficits, it is trying to do as much as it can to get the economy to accelerate the growth. I want people to understand, it is my view, and I could end up being wrong on this, that we are seeing a reflation of the economy. It isn't happening as fast as we would like because we have some constraints. But where we are today in June is a lot different from where we were in February, which is a lot different from where we were in September. And that's just because we've started to see a return to normalcy. So what I think I would encourage you listeners to think about is just that pace of reflation will start to allow some of these businesses to open and become more viable. What an SBDC will do is move from business continuity loans to sort of business recovery loans and grants to try to say, okay, you managed to survive the storm. You now need to get your footing. What are the things that you will need help with from a capital standpoint? Do you need to look at the venture capital fund? So you may need a partner. You don't need no more loans. You then up to the yin yang in loans. You may now need some patient capital to see you through. Minister Thompson will talk in some detail, or he may talk about what has already been announced around the new rules regarding crowdfunding, which is an idea that came out of the recommendations that the public made to the ERC. We had a really good submission from the general public saying, we need junior stock markets, we need to have some rules around crowdsource funding. That found its way into the Economic Recovery Committee report, and the government adopted that. So you will see in the coming weeks the rules published around crowdsource funding. And what that will allow is small businesses to have a different mechanism to be able to go out and petition and get ordinary behemoths like us to put up $500, $1,000 toward that person's plan, to find a way to mobilize our general pool of resources in that vein, or to allow those small businesses to go and get capital that way. And again, the government is only involved as a regulator of that market, but we now get into that sort of crowdsource funding so that small business owners can go in and raise funds in a legal and legitimate way, the same way some of the bigger businesses do. So it isn't only the government that is doing this, it's how the government uses these resources to catalyze other activities that would otherwise normally happen. How could it accelerate the pace of recovery? The government can't make the recovery happen by itself.
Okay, got it. So 99% of all the businesses that the SBDC has funded are seemingly domestically focused. So considering our need for foreign currency inflow, what is being done to grow businesses that cause for that inflow?
So one of the immediate things that they're looking to do is to put in place the digital infrastructure. That because, of course, part of the challenges that people who want, small businesses who want to export their goods have is just really how the network, the logistics in the export, because it's cumbersome, it's expensive. So one of the, again, recommendations of the ERC that's been adopted is that for the small business and government to work together to create the electronic platform that will allow the smallest of the small business to be able to export their product anywhere in the world or anywhere even within the country. We need to have that platform that allows that. And secondly, I just want to disabuse that notion. The SBDC funds what it gets. So persons have export interested ideas, they bring them forward. I know for sure, I don't have to guess, that they would be very interested in pursuing that and figure out how we can make it happen. But I think writ large, we have to have a enabling mechanism, the kinds of platforms that will allow persons easily to be able to export out of the country. And that's part of what the SBDC has been doing. But it's very keen to learn about that. And the Bahamas Development Bank also, in its new manifestation, because it has a new business plan, them in particular will be looking at the sectors related to farming, to fishing, to some of those other sectors, the IT space, those export leading sectors where there are opportunities to grow. And so you will start to see them recapitalize and have a focus on some of those leading edge things that are outside of the traditional industries that we have been accustomed to.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with Financial Secretary Marlon Johnson. We're talking about the 2021-2022 budget communication now being debated in the House of Assembly. I'm calling this show Living on the Edge. Marlon may disagree with me on that, but anyway, we're going to talk more about that on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
Located on Carmichael Road, Divine Designs Hair Boutique is a haven for women and men looking for professional beauty services. Our state-of-the-art and contemporary equipment creates a relaxing ambiance for you to enjoy while we cater to you. Need a hairstylist? We cater to all types and textures of hair for care and styling. We even have a barber on duty. Need a nail tech? Our technicians provide a range of nail services, including the latest trends. Unwind in one of our massage chairs while you get your pedicure. With our reasonable rates, friendly staff, and over 20 years of experience, you will be in great hands. Call us at 823-1669 or 698-1025 to schedule your appointment. Want to be pampered? Want to be slayed? Let Divine Designs make your day.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 Hyperimmune Egg Powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
One of the things I love about the Mailboat is their relationship with Bahamas Air. I can earn travel points on my international freight and redeem them when I fly.
For me, online shopping is easy with Mailboat's U.S. addresses and regular freight delivery to Nassau. Plus, I can always prepay customs and freight, and they always notify me when my package arrives.
Yeah, a lot of people think the Mailboat is just for shipping, but they also offer a safe and secure storage facility at affordable rates, all in a central, convenient location.
We also offer passenger service into Freeport multiple times per week with a seating capacity of over 450 persons. With family movies on large screens, one hot meal included, and on-board lounge for snacks and soft drinks. We're the Mailboat. We're bridging people, products, and places.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Longevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Tiki Bikini Hut at Junkanoo Beach. Great food, cool tropical drinks, and family fun in the sun. And by BMP Liquidators. High quality furniture and home goods at very reasonable prices.
And welcome back to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Glory 93.9 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm. My guest today is Financial Secretary Marlon Johnson. We're talking about the 2021-2022 budget. In case you tuned in late, bad. Make sure you watch the rest of the show. If you did tune in late, it's available live streaming on Facebook, so you can watch it there. You can also check us out on YouTube on the official Michelle Malcolm channel. And we are also on TuneIn. So there are multiple ways to tune into the show. And so we're talking all about the budget today. I do want to move on to another area now, and that is our healthcare sector, because I don't see, and maybe I missed it and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Marlon, but I didn't see any comprehensive strategy or financial support for healthcare infrastructure in this budget, including improvements. And really that ties into the need for our economy to open up. Now, the Prime Minister said that 2 hospitals will not be dealt with until the next budget. So how do you respond to that query as it relates to what...
I would go back and check what he said, Michelle. What the Prime Minister said and what went to Parliament was a resolution to get into a $68 million facility with Bank of Santander and with the guarantee of the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Association to fund the expansion to the current PMH. So that money will be raised this side of the fiscal year, and it will be set in a suspense account to build that up. In the budget would also, that work will start in the coming fiscal year. That won't wait for another fiscal year. That'll start as of July. That project will kick off. The other one around Iran will also start during this fiscal year as well. $19 million of the $39 million is budgeted for that. So you will have both of those projects starting within this fiscal year around that. But there's also money additionally inside there to complete the work. I don't know if you've been to PMH lately, but you'll see that there's a brand new block for the ER, emergency center, and there are some improvements going on there. So those remedial works will continue there and in the clinic. So there is a measure of money. I don't forget what the number is in here for both that RAND exercise, the PMH, and the ongoing upgrade of the system, including the digital system. There's a money in the budget because part of the improvements really is the improvements to the center. One of the more substantial upgrades, and the Minister of Health, I'm sure, will speak about it, is really just the continued expansion of NHI to expand primary care coverage to all Bahamians. And that's just really moving in line with something that was started by the previous administration, but to continue to be developed with the aim of making sure that all Bahamians, whether through private insurance or through NHI, have access to a primary care provider for themselves in the house, whether in the public space or through a private doctor. So so those are some of the highlights around expanding and improving the healthcare infrastructure, because it is one of those spaces that you rightly point out that needs quite a bit of attention.
But if I'm not mistaken, the Prime Minister said that it will be in the next budget period in spite of getting the money this year. Did he not say that?
The next budget period starts July. We're still in 2021. The next budget period starts July. So we're getting the money now in this budget period, which between now and the end of the month, we've gotten the funds, and the work will start in July. That's the next budget period. The next budget period starts July 1.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's move on to another topic now. And this one is a little controversial one because I've heard all kind of commentary about this. But if we are facing a cash revenue challenge, why are we discounting delinquent real property taxes to the tune of as much as 50%? Could we not adopt a progressive tax regime like selling tax certificates of delinquent accounts?
So the purpose of that was to try to get the money to come in quickly. So the government realized there's a lot of people who challenged or who haven't paid, and the reason for that particular policy decision was how could you incentivize people to come and set up long-standing arrears. So far to date, I think we would have collected about 11 million or so because of that program. So it allowed people to bring themselves current or to get on a payment plan and get back into the system. So not only did we get cash, but we also got a lot of people in and onto a payment plan to pay over time. The question about progressive taxation is a very good question. You and I touched upon this last time you were here. What the government has committed to do around fiscal reform in that place is to, and the Prime Minister again stated this, is that we will do a thorough study of our tax system. We need to understand it a little bit empirically because I have a view, you have a view, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have a view as to what our tax system ought to evolve towards. And so as a basis of that, we are going to do a full thorough review of that this year, and the Prime Minister is committed to producing a white paper, which is just another way of saying the findings will be made public so that we can have a thorough, involved discussion as to what the next step of our tax reform would look like. Again, the ERC had said we do need to consider moving to a fairer, more equitable tax system, and that study would be the first step in that, in what should the next iteration of our tax reform should be. We had the tax reform, the first iteration was the introduction of what I would deem to be very necessary value-added tax in 2015. I thought it was the right thing for that administration to do. I said so then, I believe so now. And then of course we had the incremental upward movement on value-added tax. I think that had to be done. I mean, and that's just, again, Marlon's opinion. As an economist outside that was my view then, that was my view now. But now that that iteration has been done, we still have to continue. The government is of the view, accepting what the ERC said, that we could have to continue to evolve our tax system, create more fairness and equity. And so the result of that study, which will kick off before the end of the summer, will allow us to really create an empirical base. Who bears the burden of our taxes? Who isn't paying their fair share? What about the concession regimes? Are they working? If we want to provide tax relief to those vulnerable, what's the best way to give effect to that? So these are kinds of questions that we want to be answered empirically. So when we opine on these things, we're speaking from a statement of not just opinion, but actual facts that are germane to our economy. So that will then happen with the course of the year to inform whatever future tax reforms this administration or if the government changes in the next election, the future administration would have to contemplate.
So I want to go back to that 50% reduction because it sounds to me, and maybe I'm just not hearing the way you're saying it. Maybe I'm hearing it differently than what you were trying to express. But it sounds to me like you guys, that what you had to do or what you did was make a decision between getting money in the treasury immediately or 50% less of what you should be getting.
No, so this was a rare. These are monies that weren't paid. So these are people that owed the money. The money wasn't coming in. So what you wanted to do?
That the decision was made because you were.
I was saying one of the catalysts was to try to see if we can get money in quickly. That's absolutely true. And the minister said that. But this was a thing. These were long outstanding bills. So recognizing 8 things are tough. That money wouldn't be coming in because it's old money. It isn't current bills. You weren't given a discount on your current amount. And you have to do it within a specified period of time. So it isn't stayed open. And I mean, entities do this a lot. It isn't unique to government. You owe money, okay, we'll give you a discount if you come and settle up. So really that's what it was a way to try to get people to come in and settle up on monies that they otherwise wouldn't have paid. The other approach on that would have been to say, listen, if you don't come pay, we will go seize your property and the like. And we do that as a matter of course. We have ongoing exercises where we are seeking to collect. But I can tell you, because that is when you go to that particular point where you're seizing somebody's property, that's a multi-year exercise. And what has happened, because I've been party to this, is if the person doesn't have the cash, you do have to seize the property, and then you do have to go sell the property and go through that. So it'll be years before you can make good on collecting that money for people who either don't pay or people who don't have the means to pay. So it was a way of trying to deal with several problems, allowing people to address their arrears and allowing us to to accelerate the pace of cash coming into the bank.
All right. I have another question that relates to Abaco and Grand Bahama. Since both of those islands contributed a fair share of dollars to the government's revenue, what is being done to address the dual impact of Dorian and COVID on Grand Bahama and its economy? As we know, they really didn't fully recover. Some would say from as far back as 2004 with dual hurricanes hitting it then. And now the devastation of Dorian makes that already bad situation even worse. So,
so what do you do? So I would remind your listeners that for the very first time in the history of the country, there was the creation of a special economic recovery zone, where persons had the lion's share of their consumables brought in response to what was a catastrophic situation. They had a lion's share of their consumables, their building repairs, vehicles, and brought in duty-free, tax-free. I don't recall us ever doing anything as a country that extensive before. So that was done. It was extended, and then it was extended again in a modified way. So vehicles were removed, the consumables removed, but ongoing rebuilding and equipment for businesses, building supplies, furniture for homes was extended, and it continues to be extended. So what the government would have in effect done is to try to make it as cheap as possible for persons who need to rebuild to be able to get their goods and their products in to rebuild. In addition to that, I think it's about $8 million of thereabouts has been spent on providing direct grants to individual households to enable them to put back on roofs and do some of those sorts of repairs. That money, albeit has been slow in coming, because we did have some administrative hiccups with those, but there has been millions of dollars in small home repair grants given out to persons to help them to rebuild. So that's just a snapshot of, and of course there's the $180 million or so in infrastructure repair that the government's had to foot. So what happens? So again, just to let your listeners know, what happens in other jurisdictions? Let's say you have a hurricane and blows into Texas. It knocks over the power poles. What generally happens, and you see it happen in Freeport with the private company will say, for the cost of rebuilding, we gotta have to jack up your rates. Because that's fair. Listen, their costs have gone up. So in order to recoup it, they jack up the rates. In the case of the Bahamas, because we have a utility that's owned by the government in Abaco, the government, the shareholder, through the taxpayer, for the cost of that, so that the Abaconians and the people in East and Grand Bahama would not have to foot it by themselves. So the cost of the repairs and all that was charged against the public purse to us as taxpayers, as opposed to saying, well, the cost of repairing the utilities and waters would be borne only by those persons impacted, which again, a lot of them are not aware, would have been the norm in other jurisdictions, where the utility would have adjusted the rates to pay for the repairs. So we acted as a community where all of us have signed up to rebuild it, to help out our brothers and sisters in Abaco.
Okay, I want to go back to some comments that we have from our Facebook viewers. Graham again is saying, so what I'm hearing is we've learned nothing from 9/11. We've learned nothing from the economic downturn in 2008, and we've learned nothing from the 2019 corona. We're going to stick with one trick pony. How do you respond to that?
I won't respond to his opinion. This is his opinion, and again, that's fine. That's the wonderful thing about living in a democracy. I wouldn't agree with that. I think one of the lessons learned, for example, from 2001 and also from 2008 and 2009, is that coming out of a significant economic shock, is that there has to be some deliberate things done. So what would be different now from then is that coming out of this shock, we have very specific economic stimulus towards small business. We have very specific economic stimulus towards our less developed islands. We have a tremendous amount more money made available to small businesses through the SBDC, so that we have a basis by which small business can access capital, and a basis by which small business would make it cheaper for them to get into business. We have a much stronger network around business continuity loans. Again, perhaps people don't realize it, but close to $40 million was put in the towards small business loans, continuity loans that kept I think about 500-600 small businesses going through the worst of the pandemic. The other lesson learned is you got to retain employment. So the government had a tax credit program that kept 14,000 people employed through the worst of the pandemic, and is again looking at a very direct stimulus to get people employed again, because the statistics have proven around the world. There's a Georgetown study that shows in emerging out of these circumstances, if you put the money in the hands of the private sector and allow them to employ, that will catalyze growth. Because if you get 2,500 people employed, the spin-off effect of that will create another 2,000, 3,000 jobs. So there are things being done today, to Graham's point, that wasn't done in 2008 or 2001 because the lessons have been learned. Now, I know he would never agree that that's the right thing, but that's fine. He argued there. But I can't agree with his point that nothing has been learned or nothing different has been done, because that's demonstrably untrue.
Okay, we have a caller on the line. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Yes, Michelle, listen, as the financial controller, Mr. Marlon Johnson knows he works in inland revenue, so he knows exactly how many persons are employed in the water sports industry. Okay, in industry, period. But fundamentally, the largest hotel we have in the Bahamas on the Atlantic side. These small businesses license came from inland revenue. Atlantis license came from inland revenue. Mr. Marlon Johnson, please answer this question for me. How could inland revenue allow one company, Atlantis, to interfere with all of those licenses that you all have granted permission to operate a business name in this country? And this is the point I'm making with you, Michelle. Mr. Marlon Johnson, I'm waiting for your answer, and please do not stammer. And this is my view and my opinion, by the way.
All right,
so
let him, Amos, we run out of time, so let him answer your question. Let him answer your question. All right.
Atlantis does not interfere, to my knowledge, with any license. I think what he is talking about, there's a specific instance where there's a area of land in or around Atlantis property, or on the Atlantis property, which if they want to sell from, they need to have the permission of Atlantis. We have had incidences, I don't know if this is one specific, where persons have wanted the DIR to grant them a license to operate in a land to be owned by Atlantis, without Atlantis' permission. And all we said is just the same thing. We can't issue a license to operate inside the Mall at Marathon unless the Mall at Marathon agrees. It's the same thing for Atlantis. If it's a part of their property that we have to grant. But no, other than that, Atlantis cannot say who gets a license or who does not, except for things that fall within their property, mark. So I don't know if that answers this question. If that's the instance he speak of. But again, if that is happening, where Atlantis is exerting influence outside of their sphere of domain, it's something we could take up.
So it's amazing because I have, if this Amos and I taking another call from you, because we only got 11 minutes left in the show. And you don't have 3
Michelle, I'll give you my email offline, and he can contact me if he has some specific things he wants to address.
Welcome to GPS caller.
No, Michelle, who owned the beach? So the financial controller just said to the Bahamian people that Atlantis owned the beach. These people were employed on that beach before they were on Atlantis.
Okay. Got your point. Thank you for calling. All right. We only got 10 minutes left. And
the property extends to the high water mark. So, people, it isn't who owns the beach. The public property starts at the high water mark. The private property ends at the high water mark. But people assume if it has sand on it, it's the beach. And so it's public property. But as you know, that doesn't true. It's the high water mark.
Okay. I want to read a couple of comments, and I'm sorry to all of the comments y'all have been sending that I didn't get to today, but it was a lot of ground to cover. I want to read a couple of comments, and then I want to ask the final question. So you're getting a lot of differing views. So Melvern says, it is clear they don't have a plan. That's Melvern. Lionel says, you're doing a wonderful job, Marlon. Too bad for those who don't want to see it. Their politics always standing in the way. And then Graham says, Melvern, they have a plan, but it may not include you. And Graham also is asking a question that some may be wondering. Are we going to be signing on to the WTO World Trade Organization this year? And if so, tell us about all the greatness that will bring. I don't know if you are in a position to answer that question, because that's obviously, I know what you can say, that's a policy decision. So
right.
let's keep it.
As far as I'm aware, the answer is no, though. There's been no indication that they're joining the WTO this year.
Okay. We're running out of...
And again, for people who, I just want to say, one of the things that I would encourage people to do is just, that is published online, and it was in the newspaper yesterday, the government's plan. So for people who lockstep say the government don't have a plan, I just want to point out that there is a published document that you can review and decide for yourself if there's a plan or not, and it's fine. And if you think that, listen, this doesn't constitute a plan, that's obviously great too. One of the things I like about your show, Michelle, and I like about Communists, is that it's important that there are dissenting and divergent points of view. It isn't, that's the nature of democracy. And so people should continue to feel comfortable saying, listen, I don't agree with Marlon, you're talking nonsense, and you're a sellout, and blah, blah, blah. But that's good. That's healthy, and that's normal in a democracy for you to take it. All I would ask for people to do is to examine the actual information and facts, because my concern is people hear things and they run with it, and it's not based in any sort of factual information. It's somebody saying something. 50% of the people are unemployed, and so people run with it. And so that's my only thing is, whatever views you make up your mind as to the job I am doing, the job a government may be doing, just try your best to make sure that it's grounded in actual facts. And then what opinions you come to after that, it's a good thing for democracy. And it's a good thing that people always agree.
True. All right, let's go to a couple more comments, and then I will ask that final question that I want to ask. When people, especially, this is from C. Allen Johnson, when people, especially financial persons, say resilience or resilient, they really mean prepare for economic pain.
So I think we had a lot of economic pain last year, and there, as you said, there are tens of thousands of people and families who felt that pain. Absolutely correct, C. Allen, because you have to be resilient when things are tough. So we had a tough year for tens of thousands of people, for sure. So there's a lot of truth in what he says.
All right. We have a comment from Cheryl. Cheryl says, wasn't VAT implemented to reduce debt? So why hasn't the debt been reduced over the years VAT was being collected? I can't understand the budget deficit now because of COVID. Oh, I can't understand the budget deficit now because of COVID, but what about pre-COVID years? Good question, Cheryl.
So when VAT was introduced, the then administration made a commitment that it would be used to pay down the deficits and the debt. For whatever combination of reasons, I'm going to say something that's factual. I'm not saying anything partisan. For whatever combinations of reasons, and they would say because of the hurricanes and other mitigating factors, the deficit actually got worse. That's a statement of fact. And they could attribute it to whatever set of reasons. The current administration coming in recognized that the situation was untenable, meaning that there was a considerable quantum of unpaid obligations, and that the revenues weren't sufficient to be able to meet those obligations and pay down the deficit. So that the administration, being the current administration, raised the VAT in 2018. Once the government raised the government with a plan to bring down the deficits and the debt. In the first year, the deficit that the government took office and inherited a deficit of $660 million, it came down to $420 million or thereabouts, and it went down to $237 million, and which ended up being the lowest deficit in a decade. So the current government, because of it introduced a fiscal legislation, and started reduced. To her question, that deficit started to come down. The intervening factors have been Dorian, and they have been the pandemic. But certainly over the initial three budget cycles, that deficit was coming down, and the additional monies that were being raised by the increase in taxes were being put towards reducing the deficit and debt. That's just a factual explanation. I won't give any value judgments either way, but that's a factual. And then, of course, the government would say that because now of Dorian and because of the pandemic, it has had to scuttle those plans to bring down the deficits and debt and run up significant deficits because it is dealing with a significant economic catastrophe that hopefully most of us would at least agree is a catastrophe. We can disagree on how we should tackle it, but I think most people would agree that it is truly an economic catastrophe.
Final question.
Sure.
This budget seems to be based on a lot of assumptions. What happens if those assumptions don't come true? Is there a plan B?
Right. So I wouldn't say it's based on a lot of assumptions. It's based on one core assumption. And that core assumption is that the economy will continue to gradually reflate and move back towards normalcy. That's the core assumption. If we got that wrong, right, then what will then happen, Michelle, is that we then have to scuttle the budget. That's the simple way. We would then, if we move into July and we have a repeat of what we happened last July, where we have to shut things down. You know, if we have a devastating hurricane hit New Providence or Grand Bahama, one of them, Ilustra, one of the major islands, something that will just, then you have to go back to the drawing board and reshape. So that's the simple answer to that question. We will then have to go back to Parliament with a revised budget, pause some of the plans, pause some of the concessions perhaps, and take a stab at it. So yeah, those would be the kinds of things that would cause us to have to do a retake. But the criticism that is sort of overblown, or we can say fantasy, I don't think the numbers bear that out. I think what people will see is that last year, even with the shutdown happening right at the beginning of last fiscal year, that set us back nearly $70 million, they will see that coming towards the end, when you see our Q4 report, that we will still come in at that projected deficit of $1.3 billion. Now, why do I bring that up? I bring it up to say that in the worst times, you will find out that our numbers will come in. I can't promise you come in right at 1.3 billion, maybe a little over, maybe a little under, but it ain't gonna be $400 or $500 million either way. We were able to project that and come in at our number without fudging anything. So that's what gives me the confidence that our projections can be maintained. We're also doing some things, Michelle, that we did not put in the budget around revenue enforcement and revenue enhancement to do our best to meet the criticism that our revenues are always overblown. There's a particular focus, and we'll talk about that on the next show, of some of the things that we are doing. Because the valid criticism is, before we start to talk about additional taxes, let's collect the taxes on the books. That's a valid criticism.
I'm glad you said on the next show, because I definitely want to have you back on after budget has been approved and policies are revealed in Parliament, so you could answer some of these questions. All right, but but we out of time, man. And one thing I didn't get to touch on, we've been hearing now about IMF. Are we about to? I remember a song out of Jamaica, "Living in the Hands of a Finance Man."
So last year there was the Maria Buchanan, who's an economist out of Trinidad, and who said that this year at this time we would be in an IMF program. I said at the time there was no basis for that, and again the same people who beat me up right now on your thread will say, well, no, you're wrong, because we're about to fall off a cliff. And it's the same people who say we're about to fall off the cliff. No, we're under no threat of devaluation. We're under no threat of going to the IMF. Our budget, fortunately for us, our foreign exchange reserves are at their healthiest levels still ever, by a result of a direct government decision to borrow heavily in the foreign markets. And so no threat, no concern about the IMF, no concern of falling off a cliff. It isn't an ideal circumstance by any means, but the plan to date has been working.
So as far as you're concerned, we're not living on the edge.
Not at all.
All right, I'm going to let you have the final word on that. Marlon Johnson, thank you so much for joining us on GPS. Always a pleasure to have you in our company, and I really do want to extend the invitation to you right now for whenever this budget is over and we know what those policies are, so you can come back on and we can talk about that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that, and I thank you, and I appreciate all that you do, Michelle, sincerely, and the contributions of the four people who call it. It is a wonderful thing to have a healthy, vibrant democracy with divergent views, and we ought to embrace that and appreciate that. So I appreciate all the critiques and the criticisms, and you're doing your jobs to keep all of us our feet to the fire. So thank you.
Right. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. Thank you a lot. All right, guys, that's my time. It's 1 o'clock. Got to get out of here. I pressed the wrong thing. Yeah, thanks, Delton, for fixing that. Got to get out of here. Time is gone. Tomorrow's a holiday. Yay! It'll be a real TGIF for me. I'm gonna get me some sleep. Sleep late tomorrow. Just enjoy your holiday weekend. Be safe, everybody. Don't do anything foolish. Let calm heads prevail. And let's enjoy our Labor Day holiday weekend, remembering all of the sacrifices that those who went ahead of us made, so that we could enjoy the liberties that we do today. So I will see you guys next week. I'm Michelle Malcolm. Thanks so much for looking in. Have a good weekend.